When the game publisher Bandai released a game called Stadium Events for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987, they had no idea that they were releasing what would become the rarest, most desired NES game in the world, a true holy grail of collectors. Today, a complete in-box copy of Stadium Events is worth over $30,000. And as a true collector of video games, I am proud to say that I don't have one. But I know somebody who does. Hi, I'm Chris Kohler, and this is Complete in Box, a series in which we take a look back at classic video games by, you guessed it, looking at all the physical stuff that came with a game and talking about how those items impacted the gameplay experience. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, my friend Steve Lin. Steve is the VP of Operations at Discord and a historian with the Video Game History Foundation. Hi there, Steve.
Hi, Chris. Glad to be here.
So, you have brought your treasure.
I did.
Yes.
I brought the last complete in-box game I needed.
Oh, that's right, because you actually collected NES games, and then the last box and manual that you needed for that collection was
Stadium Events.
And that's typically what happens to everybody, because Stadium Events is the NES game with the lowest print run. Just, it's impossible to find. It's really, really difficult to find with the box and the manual.
Yeah.
So it's a real treat that we actually have one here on Complete in Box.
Oh, happy to share it.
Yeah. So of the NES cartridges that were actually released at retail, Stadium Events is by far, by order of magnitude, the rarest and most expensive.
Yeah, the cartridge alone is $10,000, and I think you mentioned, the complete in-box, anywhere $30,000 north of there.
So why is Stadium Events so valuable?
It's really valuable because it was only on the market for a short period of time and then effectively recalled and then rebranded as World Class Track Meet. So you have one of the rarest games for the NES and then probably one of the most common.
A lot of kids who had an NES back in the day, we had the Power Pad, and that was a plastic mat that you'd put on the floor, and then you'd ostensibly play these athletic-themed games by running and jumping on the mat. The thing with the Power Pad, though, is that it was originally released in Japan for the Famicom, the Japanese version of the NES, by the publisher Bandai. It was called the Family Trainer in Japan, and then it was called the Family Fun Fitness Pad in the US. They bring out the Family Fun Fitness Pad, and it comes with this game, Athletic World. And so then Stadium Events ends up being the second game for the Family Fun Fitness Pad.
That you had to buy separately.
Yeah, and this would have gone on as usual, but for the fact that Nintendo looked at the Stadium Events and the Family Fun Fitness Pad and said, we want that. So Nintendo takes the Family Fun Fitness Pad and calls it the Power Pad. And they take Stadium Events and they call it World Class Track Meet. And so if you had a Power Pad as a kid for your NES, you probably played Stadium Events, but it was called World Class Track Meet. But the way that it was sold, the box, the manual, and everything, totally different. So let's check out the front of the box. From a design perspective, this does not look like a lot of Nintendo Entertainment System game boxes.
No, it doesn't. There's an actual photograph of people on the box, which we almost never see. I think the Anticipation cover and like Tecmo Super Bowl. So there's not a lot of photographs of people, and they want to show you that, hey, these people are playing with the Family Fun Fitness Pad, and it's actually the same photo on Athletic World that it is on Stadium Events. And then an actual screenshot of the game. And what I thought was weird about this box is it kind of looks like the front of the box is like the back of most boxes because it has a lot of text and then it also has a screenshot.
What's really interesting is the marketing for this thing was actually very similar to what Nintendo would do 20 years later with the marketing for the Wii. They used a lot of photographs showing people playing the Wii rather than screenshots. And so it's funny to see that on Stadium Events and see how that would kind of like impact later video game marketing down the line. Also, I think the family here is really important. The fact that they're aiming this not at kids who buy toys, but they're really saying, they're branding this as like, this is something for moms and dads too.
Yeah, you can have up to 6 people kind of register their names, and so if you have a relatively large family, you can get everybody to play.
Well, I think it's time to look at the back of the box, and I don't want to touch Stadium Events with my filthy hands, so I think that's all on you.
It'll be my filthy hands that are holding Stadium Events. And so this is the back of the box, and one of the things you can see on here is there's a lot going on. They're really trying to convey a lot of different things, all the different events that you can compete in, the 100-meter dash, long jump, triple jump, hurdles, and then all the modes. It's like, oh, it's got this tournament mode, it's got this Olympic mode, and just maybe giving you a sense that you bought the pad, you already bought into this thing, here's all the other cool things you can do.
Typically, we look at the front of the box and we look at the back of the box, but in this case, I really want to look at the side of the box for one specific reason, which is...
well, this one's got the price tag on it. We talked about, hey, this is potentially worth over $30,000. This particular copy sold for $10.99 at some point. And, you know, I'm guessing it, you know, was a used video game store or something, given the barcode that's on the back as well.
Yep. Maybe it was even on sale and sold for less than $10.99.
Yeah.
But you're gonna leave that sticker in place, right?
Yeah,
as a historical, you know, documentation.
I think some people are like, oh, you should maybe pull off some of these stickers. It's like, no, that's the history of this particular cartridge, and it's one of the reasons I like kind of saving everything, even if there's like marker or something on it.
That's something that's going to happen as video game collecting matures over the next 10, 20, 30 years. The stickers and the other things like that on the actual game cartridges might, you know, become a desired thing amongst collectors.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because there are so few copies of Stadium Events. There are some copies that are really well known for the damage that's on the cart. I think that's one of the things with, especially with the rare copies, it's going to be a way to authenticate as well. All
right, Steve, it's time. I don't know how often you do this, but it's time to crack that sucker open and go inside the box.
The fun thing you'll note about it is I've already lost a tab here. So,
oh no!
One of the tabs, and this one's hanging on by a thread.
So every time you take this out, it's like is this the day?
Is this the day? I'm gonna lose that tab, right?
That's like $1,000 tab.
Yeah. So we've got the Stadium Events cart. You know, one of the weird things about Stadium Events cart that I never liked was the end label is really close to the actual like plastic itself. You think they could have centered that, but maybe they just did a run and said, well, it's close enough.
Well, again, it's the sort of thing, maybe they'd fix it in the second run. But there was no second run.
Yeah, why would you make more of these? Right. We don't even have many of these.
Stadium Events, as you might imagine, is one of the most counterfeited, most forged NES cartridges out there. And the tough part about telling a fake is that you have to know what the original looks like. Sometimes a lot of people, you know, they think that, oh, my copy of Stadium Events might be a fake because the printing is bad on that top label. But in fact, you want to look for bad printing on the top label because that's actually an indicator that you've got a cartridge that's real.
Nowadays, when you're buying cartridges of sort of this caliber or something this rare, you actually want to open it up and take a look at the board itself because there are so many counterfeits out there. And I think most sellers, when they're putting stuff like this for sale, will actually open it up and show you pictures of the PCB and just to make sure it's authentic. I think one of the interesting things is, you know, how was this game marketed when it was under Bandai's rule and then when it was under Nintendo? World Class Track Meet, it's, you know, it looks way more athletic. This person's jumping a hurdle.
The graphic design's more realistic. It's more realistically proportioned. It's not really the sort of Japanese cartoon characters because those characters, those were literally the characters, the artwork that was on the Japanese box for this game. Yeah, I mean, they just transplanted that directly from Japan. This was a more Americanized, westernized, realistically proportioned, you know, sort of more adult look to the whole thing, while still being slightly cartoonish.
Yeah. Next thing, another very difficult piece to find is the manual for Stadium Events. I hate this manual, and there's a reason I hate it. It's not a bad manual. It's really big. In all the NES boxes, there's a little piece of styrofoam. Because this manual is longer than the cartridge, it actually has to kind of go under the styrofoam. So getting it back into the box is really hard. And I think that's one of the other reasons that when you see Stadium Events manuals in the wild, a lot of times there's a really big crease on the top or bottom because people are just trying to shove the manual into the box.
This is a really nice manual. Like, this is actually really, it's full color, you know, really nice big screenshots and individual art for each of the events, which I think is really cool. Because a lot of manuals, black and white, you know, tiny artwork. I mean, the fact that they actually did a nice big format kind of thing is actually really neat. So yeah, we get now a look here in the manual at what the Family Fun Fitness Pad actually looked like, and it's a good reminder that it looked a lot different than the Power Pad that most people used.
Yeah, it was a lot more striking than the Power Pad, and I think that was one of the things. It's like, it was very Japanese. I think is the best way to put it, because they just kind of ported it over.
So here's our art of the guy who is the champion, and he is winning the events, and he's got his big trophy. And what does it say at the top of the trophy?
Family Trainer.
Family Trainer, which is the name of the Japanese version of this, which they literally didn't even change the art. They just took the art, popped it in there, and were like, who's gonna notice?
Yeah.
We noticed. What I think is so interesting about this is that Bandai was really going for it. Like, they really were trying to create this series that would keep going with more games. It was not cheap to do a full color manual that is larger than a typical NES manual. Like, they really wanted to put the spit and polish on stadium events to make it a really well-produced game.
I mean, that's probably what led to Nintendo picking up the property, right? They realized Bandai had really invested in this, not only in the hardware, but in the software and polish. So they probably saw, hey, this is a company who really cares.
It's not often that Nintendo itself goes out and finds a game that was developed by a third party and says, that's good enough to be a Nintendo game. Like, that is a product that we have no problem putting the Nintendo branding and name on and releasing ourselves, just straight up.
Especially after it's already been released.
Steve, thank you for bringing your stadium events here.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
It's a great chance to look at this really rare game complete in box. We'll see you next time.